Okay, this is going to be an interesting one. Someone asked Merlyn from the CW show Arrow versus Hawkeye from the Avengers. What makes this one difficult is I only really have one movie to really pull from for Hawkeye, where I've got a lot more to pull from for Merlyn. So I'll do the best I can, knowing that I've got, hours upon hours of information on Merlyn, and I've got like 3 hours on Hawkeye. Because he really didn't do much in Thor, and he was kind of window dressing when it came to the Avengers. But as always, I do this through a set of criteria: intelligence, findability, strength, speed, durability, invulnerability, energy projection. And this one is going to be how inventive and how damaging is your weapon at range, i.e. bows and arrows, your versatility, and your X factor. So I'll begin first with intelligence. They showed Malcolm Merlyn as pretty much being somebody who was a multi-billionaire, ran a couple of companies, worked for a Illuminati New World Order sort of group, and was trained with the League of Assassins versus military-trained assassin. So I'm looking at essentially Batman with League of Assassin training, so Batman versus government special ops. So I've got someone who's got combat experience versus assassin experience and a tremendous amount of boardroom experience. I will have to give the experience edge to Merlyn. Fighting ability. Again, we didn't see a tremendous amount of fighting done by Hawkeye and the Avengers. He only had a couple of actual regular fisticuff sort of battles, where Merlyn had a lot more. I mean, Merlyn recently was able to defeat essentially a super soldier. So I'm going to give the fighting edge this one to Merlyn. Again, this is based more upon I've seen Merlyn do more combat-orientated things than I've seen Hawkeye. Now we're going to go to strength. Again, this one's going to go to Malcolm Merlyn. I've seen him do a lot more things that are more strength-related. Plus the bow that he's using is a regular bow. We're really not seeing that much in the way of enhanced compounding. It's very much as a bow, where what you're seeing from Hawkeye is you're seeing a lot more military special ops sort of bow. It's got a lot more enhanced tensile strengths to it, so it's not going to require as much of a pull to get the same amount of damage out of it. So I'm comparing someone who's using a more traditional style bow versus someone who's using a more high-tech, state-of-the-art bow. As well as, haven't seen him do a lot of overall manual sort of things where what you see Merlyn do is a tremendous amount of strength. Now we'll go into the energy projection since we're talking about the bow. This is how strong are they at overall range. This one, I'm comparing someone who's using traditional arrows versus the trick arrows and everything else, and the explosive arrows and lots of the different sort of tricks and the more impactful things that we saw happen on Hawkeye. So Hawkeye did definitely have a much more destructive range ability when it came to his overall arrows. Now we'll go to versatility. He is also using a lot more different styles of arrows. He showed the ability to shoot arrows that were somewhat homing without having to look. That's a tremendous amount of additional abilities that you happen to see coming from essentially more of a state-of-the-art sort of bow and a state-of-the-art quiver. Speed. This one's going to go to Merlyn, predominantly because when we saw him actually battle Arrow, as well as some of the other people that he did actually do battle with, he did show an absolute peak human conditioning amount of speed, as well as the ability to Batman quite frequently. When I say Batman, I pretty much mean he was able to defeat somebody and then disappear into the darkness. That's an incredible amount of speed. Didn't really see anything that made me think that Hawkeye was absolute peak human. Definitely very close, but again, him being a minor character, virtually a cameo in 2 movies. He didn't really have anything that really gave me the ability to think that he is definitely someone who is at absolute peak human. Now we're looking at durability. We saw Hawkeye take a good shot to the face and pretty much be kind of beaten up. And Malcolm Merlyn practically came back from the dead. So again, he's got more of the different sorts of herbs that you can pull from all the different assassins training, which is definitely going to give him an edge, because he's going to be able to take some sort of wounds that he's taken He's going to have carry on him some sort of small amount of leaves or whatnot. It's going to actually help him recover much faster. Where we pretty much saw, Hawkeye take a shot to the face and pretty much be knocked unconscious and have a giant welt on his face for quite some time. So he again has just regular human level, or someone has human level and access to what we'd almost call more like Ayurveda and different sorts of traditional, bordering on magical, from the way they're actually perceived, sorts of ointments and unguents. Invulnerability. This is one of those weird things. Hawkeye, in the comics, normally had on at least a full body gear. In the movie, he's got on a vest, pants, and bracers. That's really it. Okay. Malcolm Merlyn had on Kevlar, as well as he's covered head to toe. So you got someone who's entirely covered, and is also wearing a small amount of body armor. So we got somebody who is exposed on the majority of his arms and his face, versus someone who's totally covered. And with that, I have to give the environment edge to Malcolm Merlyn, because he is somebody who, he's showing up, he doesn't quite know exactly what he's going to be getting himself into, so what he's wearing, normally when he's out on mission, is going to be a very light, very tactical, very useful, and very bulletproof sort of armor, versus somebody who is walking with unprotected head and unprotected arms. It's like, people joked for the Captain America movie, they're like, well, why does everyone shoot at the shield? You have a guy whose face is fully unprotected. Why not shoot at his face? Why does everyone shoot perfectly for this body mass where he's got a shield at? How come no one's aiming for his legs? And with Hawkeye, you have a guy with a bow and arrow who is normally like this. And when you're like this, the chest protection that he has isn't going to help him because it doesn't cover his arms. So he's fully exposed from here all the way through. Versus someone who's wearing something that actually is a tactical armor, which is going to have a full level of coverage. Which is going to reduce overall penetration of almost any sort of weaponry. So we're already 6-2 for Malcolm Merlyn, just because we've seen him do a lot more. And if we were to see in a couple extra movies, if Hawkeye were to do a lot more, some of these things could switch, but where it's at right now, 2 seasons of Arrow, Merlyn's had hours upon hours he's had a couple hours of screen time versus somebody who's had, maybe 45 minutes grand total. Now we come to that all-important X factor. This I'm actually going to give to Hawkeye, and I'm giving him this because we don't have a lot of information on what he actually truly can do. So he might have some of the other tricks up his sleeve that he could potentially use in a match against Malcolm Merlyn. However, based on the information, we know a lot more about Merlyn, so Merlyn is more often than not going to take Hawkeye to the clanger.